One evening or one night, or I should say one morning, because I remember I woke up like it was probably 2:30 or 3 a.m. and I just didn't feel right. And I went downstairs and I took my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was like way off the charts. It was so high. It was scary. It was like the numbers they say, like, if you ever have blood pressure that's this high, go to the emergency room immediately. That's how scary it was. We went to the emergency room. They were able to get it under control. I immediately started making appointments with my primary care doctor out here and also a psychiatrist, and great team of doctors I had. And I found out a lot about my health that I wasn't really doing right. I'm the type of person that I like to take the bull by the horn. If this is my life, it's my health. If something's not working, I'm not just going to say, okay, well, we're doing the best I can. I've got good doctors. I'll just go with the program. No, I knew that I had to do something different to change my life, or else I could die. And that's pretty serious. I didn't want to die. So through my research and talking to others, and I came across magic mushrooms, psilocybin, microdosing of magic mushrooms, and everything I saw and read and listened to and viewed led me to believe that this really could be my answer.
Hi, Envisionaires. It's Nicole Nguyen here. Welcome to the Envisioneer podcast. This is the podcast where we envision living our best lives by exploring everyday topics related to health, wealth, and community. This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered to be medical, legal, tax, financial, or other professional advice.
This podcast does not encourage or endorse any illegal activity.
We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liability that may arise from the information in this podcast.
The views explored in the podcast may not always be those of the host.
On today's episode, we have Dr. David Madow, who is an American dentist, entrepreneur, public speaker, author, and video content creator. David is not only a well-respected leader and speaker in the North American dental industry, but he is also well-versed in personal finance, having written the book, How to Become the Neighborhood Millionaire. He is also a thriving content creator, having 2 YouTube channels. One is called the RV Dummy and Travel Channel, where he and his wife share their experience in having bought an RV, not having known a thing about RVs before making that purchase, and also recording their travels and adventures driving around North America in their RV. The second channel he has is called Microdose U, spelt with the letter U, which is a channel where he shares his personal experiences in microdosing magic mushrooms, which he credits has helped him with anxiety and depression. He also has a very popular podcast called Microdose U, which tens of thousands of people listen to every month who want to learn about all things microdosing. Today, we will be having a candid conversation with David about his personal experiences with microdosing and what he has learned along the way. So, David, a very warm welcome to the Envisioner podcast. I know you're joining us from the US, so can you tell the listeners or viewers where you're joining us from?
Thanks, Nicole, for having me. Really appreciate that. I am, as we speak right now, I am in Salt Lake City, Utah, where my wife and I moved from the East Coast of the U.S. about 5 years ago.
Ah, fantastic. So, how's the weather there right now?
It's cold. We're expecting some snow today and through the weekend, and especially in the mountains. I can pretty much see the mountains from my window, but we're in the valley, but the mountains should be getting, from what I hear, the mountains are going to get a couple feet possibly this weekend.
Wow.
So it's being skiers, it's very exciting.
I was just going to ask you guys are skiers, but you are, so that's good.
Yeah.
Right. So, David, you have, in my opinion, a very multifaceted background with your professional career as a dentist, entrepreneur, author, and now content creator. How did it all start for you?
Well, that's the $1 million question. That's a really good question. And the way it started probably led to some craziness in my life as well. I guess I'll start kind of not at the exact beginning, because I don't want to bore anybody with my early years of my life, but probably when I was in high school to college, I was very influenced by my mom, who kept saying, Dave, you should be a dentist. You should be a dentist. And her dad was a physician, and I think she really admired the medical community and the dental community. And without really ever asking me like what my passion is, it was just like kind of like instilled upon me, you're going to be a dentist. And I kind of took the bait, and it sounded kind of cool. And so as I went to college, I took the science courses that I needed to take. And the first 2 years of college, I kind of goofed off a lot and didn't do that well. But the second 2 years, I really buckled down and became a really good, serious student and was admitted to dental school. Went to dental school. And really early on, as I got into dental school, really early, probably early on in my first year, this little voice inside my head was telling me, Dave, why are you doing this? This isn't your passion.
Mm-hmm.
But, being around 22 years old, somewhere in early 20s, once you start something like that, it's very difficult to say that this is not for me. So you kind of just go with the program. So I went through dental school. I did very well, passed, and did a 1-year general practice residency in dentistry in North Carolina. Then did a few different associateships in dentistry, working for other offices, and then started my own practice with a friend of mine, with a classmate of mine, actually. And life seemed really good, like really perfect from the outside.
Yeah.
People looking in from the outside were thinking, oh, the guy's doing great. Like, he's a dentist, everything. He's opening up his own practice. He's got a successful practice, beautiful family. The guy's living the life. Everything's perfect. Mm-hmm. But Nicole, it really wasn't, because only I knew this on the inside. Just something about dentistry, as great of a profession it is, and I'm not minimizing that one bit, because we need good dentists out there wherever we are in the world. But I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think it resonated. I didn't think it was like my absolute passion in life. And it was really strange. As good as my practice was, I remember I'd be working on patients and in the treatment room, and there'd be like this picture in front of me in a frame on the wall that I always kind of looked at, and it kind of had like a glass frame, so I could not only look at the picture, but I could see a little bit of my reflection coming back at me as I'm working on patients. Yeah. And I would always think to myself, God, I don't want to see my reflection in this mirror 10 years from now doing the same thing, or 15. I don't want to be growing old doing this. Something's not right. And it took a toll on me. And I would say probably 10 years into my dental practice, I started like thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do? Because I don't want to be doing this when I'm 65 or even 55. I just don't want to be doing this. So I actually started another business with my brother. Let me back up for a second too, because it's an interesting point. Not only did I become a dentist, but I have 2 younger brothers, and they followed in my footsteps.
Oh, wow.
So 3 brothers, 3 dentists. So it just so happened with my youngest brother, who was also practicing dentistry in the same area, kind of the same area. We kind of started another business. It was kind of my idea, but we would come up with dental products to market to dentists and help dentists in their practice. Because as much as I didn't love my dentistry, I was still pretty darn good at it. It's kind of like a blessing and a curse. But we started helping other dentists in their own practices. We started becoming nationally known speakers in dentistry, coming up with products and coaching and all kinds of things. And we ended up traveling all over North America to speak to dental groups and dental associations. We owned our own large dental conference in Las Vegas for 25 years. Wow. It was actually a lot of fun, Nicole, because I didn't really have to practice dentistry anymore, but I was able to make my living based on the fact that I was a dentist, and it was actually pretty cool. But actually, that even started weighing on me after a couple of decades. It started weighing on me a lot, because here I am traveling around speaking to large audiences, but still, I'm talking about a topic that, in my heart, I still was just not passionate about. So that only takes you so far, Nicole. So around probably a little bit before COVID. We were still living in Maryland. I'd say probably roughly 2017, 2018. Every time I went to a speaking gig, every time I turned on my computer to do a podcast for dentists, I started feeling like this anxiety creeping into my life. And it was hard to explain. I would wake up in the morning with nothing wrong with me and nothing to be worried about or concerned about, but my heart would be beating quickly. I feel like this constant level of anxiety. And it wasn't getting any better. Every time I went to speak, or if we had a conference or speaking to coaching clients of ours or whatever it might be, I felt like really, really on edge, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. Now, coincidentally, at that time, my wife and I really wanted to make a big lifestyle change. I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S. in Maryland, and she lived there with me as long as we knew each other. She's from Japan, actually. But as much as we liked Maryland and got some good things out of it, and friends and family were there, we wanted to change our lives because we love mountains, we love skiing, we love hiking, we love backpacking. And so the West was calling us. So we moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, back in, I think that was probably about 2018 or 19, something like that. Sold everything we owned back in Maryland, including our house, almost everything that went with it, almost all of our possessions. We got in that RV van, when you did the intro, that RV van that we had bought that I didn't know much about. We pretty much piled everything into that and drove out west and started a brand new life with being much more minimalistic. I mean, let me go back to the dental thing and my first marriage and the life that I was living that just wasn't really perfect for me. And the reason I'm spending more time on this, Nicole, if it's okay, is it's gonna all make sense to your viewers and to your listeners. It's not that I'm just telling. I don't want to tell a boring story, but it's all gonna make sense. I was back east when I was living this life as a dentist and as a speaker, and I was very successful, and we had very nice houses, very nice possessions, fancy cars in the driveway at all times, kids growing up that went to private schools, and hanging around the right people. And as I say that, for your people that listen to audio only, I'm using air quotes, the right people, because that kind of came back to bite me as well. These people were not as right as I thought they were for my life. There came to a point where, as much money as we had and the lifestyle we were living, it wasn't good. It just was not working. And that marriage ended. I met my beautiful present wife close to 20 years ago, and I think we're doing things more like the right way, not focusing on things like possessions and money and hanging around with like the right people. You know, we hang around people that we resonate with. It doesn't have to, I don't care how much money they make. I don't care if they're janitors or if they're doctors. It doesn't matter to me how much money somebody. It's hanging around the right person. So we made this move to Utah, and I had to fix a lot of things in my life that probably took place as a result of a very difficult marriage and a profession that I was in that didn't really resonate, and that really wreaked havoc on my body, both mentally and physically. And I'm happy to talk about anything. I won't hold anything back, because I like to share my mistakes in my life with people so it can help other people.
Oh, thank you.
But you're welcome. It took a really big toll, again, mentally and physically, which you can ask me any questions about that. But here we are. And to this present date, I'm really thankful for my life. And I can finally say that I am exactly where I want to be in my life on this planet. Exactly where I want to be.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I like that journey. I like how we started kind of like adolescence, right? And how your mom had a really big impact with regards to your career journey, your initial career journey. So that's quite nice. And obviously, I'm sure she was so proud of 3 boys having become dentists. Like, that's
she's still with us. She just turned 89 a few days ago, and she's doing well, and she's extremely proud. And she probably knows about my feeling about dentistry, but she's still proud of the 3 of us. And she should be. She should.
Oh, well, happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Thanks. I'll pass this on. I'll pass this show on to her for sure.
Oh, please
she'll
do.
love that.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
So you had this amazing mom who helped, spur you guys onto your career, which is cool. And then you were in North Carolina for university. Is that for dental.
For 1 year, a general practice residency. After I finished and became a
Yeah.
dentist at University of Maryland, I spent 1 year in North Carolina. I'm working at a hospital dental setting and learning.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then you moved eventually to Maryland. Is that right? And that's where you said.
Well, my ex-wife and I moved back to Maryland.
Okay. Yep.
And that's where I started my dental career.
In Maryland.
And that's
yes. Kind of where you had most of like your sort of that life, that part of your life, that chapter with your ex-wife and building your dentistry practice up, and then also the side business, which I think I read grew to 7 figures. Is that right?
It's been quite successful, and that business is still here.
Wow.
I mean, I can tell a little quick story back around. I remember this because it coincided with COVID, and this also coincided with my anxiety getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm sure there was definitely a depression, a component of depression in there as well. Around the time COVID started hitting and everything was just, the whole world was going crazy, I said to myself, and I said to my brother, who was my partner, I said, I need to take a sabbatical. I can't, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I need to just take a break and let's reevaluate. And we agreed. He's been fantastic with me. And the sabbatical was supposed to be about 2 to 3 months. And I said, I'll reevaluate. But after the 2 or 3 months, I said to my brother, Rich, I said, I think I'm going to keep away from this. I don't want to do it anymore. And we decided to, we're still extremely close. I still own half of the business, but Rich is such a good guy. He does all the work.
Amazing.
So, but I had to step away, Nicole, because it was not good for my life and good for my health. It wasn't resonating with me at all.
The universe gives us sometimes different indications that we need to make a change, and whether it manifests, physically, mentally, spiritually, it can manifest in so many different ways. So I think it's really self-aware of you to be able to recognize those and maybe start making the changes that you needed to make, over the last 10, 15 years with your now wife, which is fantastic. And so from your story, I'm hearing this very strong growth mindset. And from our interaction, I get this feeling that you have you embrace a growth mindset. And a lot of envisionaries who are the listeners and the viewers, they also share that mindset. And so one of the questions I had was whether or not you've always had that your whole life, or is that something you've really tried to cultivate in recent years for example, when you let go of a lot of maybe the older lifestyle? Was that part of your sort of, growing into the next iteration of yourself?
No, I think I've had this growth mindset for as long as I can remember, probably, maybe from the time I was finishing college, as probably you say in the UK, university. I've always been into growth and into making myself a better person, more successful. I've always been interested in personal finances as well. I think this is nothing new, but also I learned over the past couple decades that not only do I embrace growth and try to make my life as good as I possibly can, in all the different aspects, but I've also been, I feel like a natural teacher. I just feel like what I learn on my own, I love to share with other people. And that's, so you talked about in my intro, I've done a lot of different things. And every time I do something like that, I'm free to share with others because I get so passionate about something if it works, and I have to share with others.
That's so beautiful. You have a very generous spirit. You're very generous of spirit, and that's such a beautiful quality. That's such a nice quality.
I think I'm like a natural teacher. I don't really, I never taught in the formal educational system at all, but I think I've learned how to teach and how to resonate with other people and get them passionate about their lives as well. That's something that's come very naturally to me.
And so how do you cultivate? Is it through listening to speakers, going to personal development conferences? Is it, is it through spiritual experiences? How do you cultivate your own personal growth?
All of the above there. Over the past, I'd say, well, I'll reveal my age if it's okay. I'm 68 right now.
Wow.
So I will.
I really thought you were in your early 50s.
Oh, come on. You don't
No,
have to say
I
that.
did.
Don't
That's
be
so
so, don't be.
true. Wow. That's great.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, I appreciate that, Nicole. I wasn't really fishing for compliments like that, but the reason I gave my age is because I wanted to say, like, over at least the past 4 to 5 decades, I would say I have embraced, going to conferences, listening back in the day, listening to audio cassettes of the people that could teach me things. But it's also a lot from life experience. I'm actually having made tremendous mistakes and then learning, because a lot of people make mistakes, but they're afraid to change their lives. They're afraid to, like, reverse things, and a lot of times the unknown is scarier. Even if you're in a really tough life with a lot of mistakes, changing things and facing the unknown is very scary to people. So that's why a lot of times people stay in really bad marriages. They stay in jobs or professions that they don't love and are not passionate about, because they're afraid of what's out there. They're afraid of trying something new. So I've learned all that. So it's very scary that, from what I've seen, people being afraid to get out of things. But I was never afraid. I've made big changes in my life all along, because I don't want to be stuck in something that's not working out for me.
May I ask a question? Who's your favorite, like, uh, speaker or, personal development person that you have listened to? Because I know you mentioned, like, cassettes and different things. Who's your favorite?
Back in the
Yeah,
day,
who's your
yeah.
favorite?
Well, so I listened to a lot of, like, dental visionaries who probably nobody would really know any of their names, so that they wouldn't mean anything. But somebody that I can remember, and I'm not saying I'm a big fan of this person these days, especially, but back, I'd say 30 years ago, I read a book by Tony Robbins.
Mm,
I think it was called "Awaken the Giant Within."
yes.
And I'm familiar with that book, and I'm sure of course, everybody knows Tony Robbins. And I've never been to a Tony Robbins, like, seminar or conference, but I read that book, and that was right around the time that I was trying to, like, morph or segue out of dentistry and get into something that I felt more passionate about. And what he said in that book, it pretty much, sum up a thick book that was, like, about that thick, into a few words, was like, you've got to follow your passion. You cannot be stuck in something that's just not working for you. And again, it was much more complex than that. But that book got me to, like, get out of my comfort zone and do something that I that maybe wouldn't have done otherwise.
Wow, that's incredible. So you'd recommend, maybe if someone's listening out there, maybe pick up that book. They might need it. That might be that catalyst to take the next step.
I loved
Yeah.
it, and I used to speak about it when I was speaking to audiences. I would, like, have a screenshot of that book in my PowerPoint and say, this book, among other things, that just changed my
Yeah, yeah,
life.
yeah. It's interesting. So actually, my hubby and I, we actually went to one of his UPW, Unleash the Power. We went, yeah,
Right.
and recently, and it was amazing. It was transformative, 100%. It was incredible. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So
great.
he's
Great
still
to
doing
hear.
it 30 years on, I guess, or however. So,
He
yeah,
definitely is.
amazing.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, I listened to your first episode of the podcast, and you described some personal challenges you faced before discovering microdosing, and you did touch on it a little bit, in your, talking about your marriage and how it was a little bit difficult. But can you share some of the challenges that you were facing? Just, that really kind of spurred you on into the journey of the microdosing.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Well, I've identified several things in my life that were big things that definitely added or influenced this anxiety and depression that I went through. And I've touched on those already. So probably two of the biggest things were my first marriage, and that was just very difficult. And again, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, because everybody's human and everybody does things their way. But the second half of it just got very bad. It just wasn't really working for me at all. Being in a profession that was not really resonating in my heart, that was another one. And also, I think another big thing, which I didn't talk about. I really don't talk about this that much, but my mom, again, gotta love her, but she thought she was doing the right thing, but she started me in school a year earlier than I should have been. So I was always going through elementary school, through all schools, through college and dental school. I was always 1 year younger than everybody else in my class. And when you're really young, it doesn't really matter. But when you're going through puberty and then getting into growing up and dating and things like that, 1 year makes a tremendous difference. And I think that really, and also add to that, I was a very late bloomer. So that looking back, that was incredible trauma to me. Really, really tough trauma. So I did leave off when around the time we were leaving Maryland and moving to Utah, I started feeling this anxiety and depression coming on. Once we moved to Utah, it actually got, you would think it would get better looking at these mountains out here, but it started getting worse and worse and worse. And I didn't even know why. I felt I was always in fight or flight mode, sympathetic nervous mode. I just felt like I was always on edge. I never felt like I was able to relax. And I remember one evening or one night, or I should say one morning, because I remember I woke up like it was probably 2:30 or 3 a.m. and I just didn't feel right. And I went downstairs and I took my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was like way off the charts. It was so high. It was scary. It was like the numbers they say, like, if you ever have blood pressure that's this high, go to the emergency room immediately. That's how scary it was. So I went upstairs again, woke my wife up, and I said, Yoko, I said, my blood pressure is really high. You've got to take me to the emergency room right now. So she was, after figuring out she was sound asleep. After figuring out, we went to the emergency room. They were able to get it under control. I immediately started making appointments with my primary care doctor out here and also a psychiatrist, and great team of doctors I had. And I found out a lot about my health that I wasn't really doing right. One thing was I had obstructive sleep apnea, and I don't know how much your viewers or listeners know about that, but that's when you stop breathing multiple times in the middle of the night and you're lacking oxygen to your tissues, and it's very, very, very dangerous. And if you look up the effects of sleep apnea, two of the most common ones are anxiety and depression, amongst a lot of others. Also, with my psychiatrist, he put me on some antidepressants. We were experimenting with different medication, different talk therapy. I was put on medication for high blood pressure. It just, Nicole, it was. I hate to say it, but it was a big mess. I mentally and physically, I thought I had aged 10 years in the year we moved out here. I felt like I was on death's door. It's how bad it was. I would spend days just laying on the sofa, not being able to get up, not being able to be active. All my life I've been a very, very active and athletic person, but it was really, really getting bad. And my doctors, as good as they were, I just didn't think that my treatment was making. I just didn't think it was making tremendous improvement. Antidepressants, I have nothing against them. I was on Lexapro, nothing against it, and it did help. It did help some. And talk therapy, yes and no. I'm not a big fan of talk therapy, but I had to do it. But I'm the type of person that I like to take the bull by the horn. If this is my life, it's my health. If something's not working, I'm not just going to say, okay, well, we're doing the best I can. I've got good doctors. I'll just go with the program. No, I knew that I had to do something different to change my life, or else I could die. And that's pretty serious. I didn't want to die. So through my research and talking to others, I came across magic mushrooms, psilocybin, microdosing of magic mushrooms. And everything I saw and read and listened to and viewed led me to believe that this really could be my answer. So I'm also not the type of person that spends a lot of time researching. Like, a lot of people, they want to buy something on Amazon and they'll research the reviews for a week or two or three. This product better be right. I'm not going to buy it until I research all the compatible product. I've never been like that. If I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to dive in head first and do it. So I with a little bit of research, I dove into the microdosing of magic mushrooms thing and just started. And Nicole, almost on day one. Now, this might have been some placebo effect. I'm fine admitting that. But almost on day one, the minute I took that first capsule of magic mushrooms, I felt like my life was going to change. I just felt it. Yeah. And so just, I mean, if I can, I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but I've been microdosing magic mushrooms now for about 2.5 years. I've thrown in some slightly larger doses than microdose, some large, but nothing tremendously heroic, but some large doses. And over 2.5 years, the graph, this is going to be for your video people, but I'm making it like a little, the graph has been like just going up, better, 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 better. Just when I think that maybe I'm fine, maybe I should stop, my life gets better and I feel better and better and better every single day. And these days, I just float through every day peacefully, easily. Whatever's thrown at me, I'm able to handle very well. I would say my anxiety level is zero, and I really mean zero. I've got no anxiety anymore. Just, Nicole, in the past 5 years ago, if I was doing a podcast like this with somebody, I'd be on there. I'd be doing a great job. I mean, I hope I'm doing it. I do the best I can, but also at the same time, I could feel like my anxiety and my heart beating and racing. And I just, nobody would know it. Nobody would know it because I feel the same. I look the same. But now, right now, we're talking together and I am at 100% peace. I feel zero anxiety. My life has totally changed. And with that, but I've done a lot of other things in addition to the microdosing, to be fair to your listeners and viewers. But with everything I've done, my health has done a 180. My blood pressure is back to normal. My sleep apnea is under control. Crazy health issues, both mental and physical, they've just melted away. They're like every single one is just gone. And I'm living life the way it should be lived.
So getting back, okay, so let's get back to the first experience when you decided you had the capsule. So it was a capsule rather than like the raw, like, okay. And so how was that experience for you? Like, do you still remember it?
I remember it vividly. I remember it really, really well because it was and I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And so all the people in my school and a lot of friends they were doing a lot of drugs and psychedelics. I mean, that was the time everybody was doing that. And I was afraid of psychedelics. I definitely experimented a lot with cannabis back then, for sure. And I really enjoyed that, but I was always afraid to do psychedelics. So this wasn't the first time I ever ingested a magic mushroom, anything psychedelic at all. I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I've read a lot, but I did, and this is just a microdose. So it's not supposed to be a psychoactive dose. So I ingested it. I took a capsule. It was 200 milligrams. And I was instructed just hang around, sit down, watch some TV. And I turned the TV on and I was just, after about 30 minutes, a commercial would come on and I was just laughing and just everything was funny. And again, I think this might have been partly placebo because it was a microdose. Microdoses are not supposed to be psychoactive at all. But then I remember a short time after that, I walked over to the park across from my house and it's a beautiful park. And I just lay down on a grassy hill and had my earbuds in. I was listening to the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper. Perfect album for, while you're microdosing or while you're dosing anything. Sgt. Pepper, made to be listened to on psychedelics. I'm 100% convinced of that. And I was just in peace, having a great time. I was watching as people walked by and cars drove by, and they just looked a little different to me in a good way. But that first experience, that's what it was like pretty much. And I knew from there that I was onto something.
Interesting. And so, okay, well, why don't we go into a little bit about the microdosing? Because I think the listeners, the viewers, they're into, like, they want to learn about this topic, but like, I think a lot of people have preconceived notions about what it is. I definitely I've never done it, so I don't know. So why don't you tell us a little bit what it is and what it's not, basically. So why don't we start with like, what is microdosing for those that are listening? And yeah, let's just try and tackle that in your experience.
Okay, sure. Great question. So microdosing, probably the term itself can probably use for anything. I mean, I guess you could probably microdose a Tylenol if you want, But microdosing, and then the way we use it with generally with psychedelics or even with cannabis can be microdosed. It's generally taking a small dose of what typically would be thought of as like a recreational dose. And I don't really like to use the term recreational dose anymore, because I really look at psilocybin or any psychedelic as real, true medicine. I mean, psilocybin especially has been used by indigenous cultures for, I looked this up a while ago, tens of thousands of years. I mean, at least 10,000 years. I mean, it's a very, very sacred medicine. So I don't really like to say, like, I don't really like to use the term like recreational or go to a party and use it. It's a serious medicine. But a microdose is generally about 10% of which we'll call a larger, or a normal larger dose. And when you use a microdose, whether it's cannabis or whether it's psilocybin, it's supposed to be sub-perceptual, meaning you're not hallucinating, you're not seeing colors, you're not seeing patterns. You just can go about your day totally normally. You go to work, you take care of your family, you can drive a car, but in oh yeah, but in the background, you might feel like things are flowing easier. You feel like a little more positive, a little more calm and relaxed. But you're not experiencing it. You're not high, and you're not experiencing any psychedelic effects at all. You can totally go about your normal life when you microdose.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard of people, again, because I've been researching in preparation for this interview, people doing it like before work, after work, and so it seems like a lot of that is, you can do it, and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't seem to hinder your performance or your everyday functions. Is that right?
That's it. That's exactly right. Now, I will tell you this, since you asked about the beginning. As time went on, I mean, there's only so long that a placebo would, if it was a placebo at first, I've been doing it for over 2.5 years now. And like I said, that graph just keeps getting better and better and better. So through microdosing, I am absolutely positive it has rewired my brain and my neural pathways and the way I think every single day. It's done that. But I'm happy to also continue talking about the actual microdosing itself. Any direction you want to go in is totally fine with me. I want to just help you and your listeners out.
Yeah, I think people really are curious to learn, and I think this conversation is supposed to be educational. So I'm just gonna pick your brain as much as I can. So
Absolutely.
So it's like, now we know what it is, but how is it done, and where does it take place? Like, is in your home, or do you do it? I've read, again, like facilities. Again, maybe that's more research based, but yeah. So how does one do microdosing? I'm sure it can be a variety of ways.
It's a variety of ways. And also, Nicole, I also want to make it very clear to you and to your listeners as well that nothing that I'm saying is to be taken as medical advice. Like, always talk to your healthcare practitioners. And I was very transparent with mine. Both of my doctors, my psychiatrist and my primary care doctor, I told them what I'm doing. Now, they didn't have to agree. That part's okay. And my psychiatrist, like, he pretty much said, go with it. He said, I've got patients that do this, and he told me to go with it. But we should always be transparent and honest with people that we're dealing with, and don't try to hide anything. But so I just want to be clear. This is not medical advice. This is my experience, my journey. The most common way to microdose is grinding up magic mushrooms and dried mushrooms and placing them in capsules and just swallowing them in a capsule. Now, I don't do this myself. I've got somebody that a grower that does it for me. You don't have to do it yourself. I don't really want to be in the practice of growing my own mushrooms, drying them out, grinding them up, weighing them out, putting in capsules. No, I have somebody that does it for me. And very, very easy. They're easy to swallow. That's generally the way I recommend beginning to microdose, because since they're pre-weighed very accurately, you know exactly what you're getting. There are other ways. I love chocolate bars. Now, when the magic mushrooms are baked into chocolate bars, and you just take a little bite, and I'm very experienced, so I know what I'm getting. But somebody that's just starting, I would not recommend using a chocolate bar, because you have to kind of take a small bite and just approximate how much that is. And that's capsules are the best way to go. Also, there's another method. Instead of swallowing a capsule, putting the dried ground magic mushroom in a tea bag, in an empty tea bag, or even in a tea bag with other type of tea, and mixing it. And again, you weigh it out so you know exactly what you're getting. But when you steep the tea, it's basically the same thing. It's going in, it's extracting the psilocybin from the magic mushroom, and it's going into the water, and you're swallowing it. It's exactly the same. Where to do it? No, that you don't have to. This is microdosing. You don't have to go to any special ceremony. You don't have to travel to another country. I do recommend to everyone that listens and watches that you do it in a place where it's legal or decriminalized. I'm not recommending to anybody that they break any type of law, no matter where you are. But there are enough places where it is legal and or decriminalized, especially in the U.S. But I microdose generally in the morning on an empty stomach from home.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. So we have a few disclaimers that are also in this conversation, which is very true. 100%. This is not medical advice, and we are not encouraging anyone to do anything illegal. So that's very clear.
I'm very careful because, again, I do podcasts about this, and it's totally legal to talk about my experience. And I never claim that I do it from my home. Actually, I mean, I really, I do a lot of traveling in my life still, with family in different parts of the U.S. So I never will exactly tell somebody where. I just try to be very careful with that. But again, doing it from home, first thing in the morning, empty stomach. Before you eat breakfast is the best way. However, it's very forgiving, and you can do it on a full stomach if you want. You can do it in the evening if you like. I like to do it in the morning only because I feel, again, I can feel, even though it's sub-perceptual, you can still feel this special feeling most of the day when you do it in the morning. As opposed to you do it at night, you fall asleep. It still works. It still works fine. I like to feel the benefit during the day.
Fascinating. Now, and you mentioned your wife. Is she does she partake, or is she more just an observer, a witness to it? Does she?
Well, she's it's a great question. First of all, she's very good at understanding, and if I explain to her that I'm doing something, as long as it doesn't sound like absolutely crazy or it's going to get me in some kind of trouble, and she's fine. But there was a time early on in the microdose journey that she was experiencing some really. She's in kind of tough situations around here in Utah. We've had some droughts, and we see like the climate changing. And she was upset about a lot of that stuff. And I asked her if she wanted to try some microdosing to maybe help change her thought pattern about what's going on. And she did for a very short amount of time, and she said it worked very well, but she didn't need to continue, and that was pretty much that. But she's certainly not against it in any way, and I think she has clearly seen the difference it's made in me, and I mean like a 360 or a 180. A 180 that's turning halfway. You know what I mean. It's made such a difference. I don't see how anybody can say this is a bad thing.
And do you think that you'll continue with microdosing? Do you see it as like a form of therapy that you'll use for the rest of your life, or do you ever take breaks from it?
It's funny because when I first started, I said to myself, I want this to fix me, but I don't want to be like one day in a nursing home. And by the way, I hope I don't want to die in a nursing. I want to die like when I'm 100 years old on a ski slope, maybe just keel over. That I don't want to be in any kind of long-term care. But I had this vision, like I'm going to be in some type of long-term care facility. I'm going to be sick and old, and I've got to ask, can I please have my psilocybin? I don't want to be in that situation. So I figured, okay, I'm going to do it for a certain amount of time. It's going to fix me, and then that's going to be it. However, through my 2.5-year journey, and I talk about this on my show all the time, because one of the most common questions is what you just asked. How long do you have to do it? It's a very common question. And my answer today is very different than it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Very different. Because like I've shared with you, the graph, the line on that graph keeps getting better and better and better. I'm Nicole. 6 months ago, I would have still some kind of weird days, not bad days, but I remember I was in a Costco, and I just felt like something wasn't right. It just felt like and I got out of it because I knew like tomorrow would be totally fine because I knew it was temporary. But now, 6 months after that, I'm happy to. I don't even have days like that anymore. It just keeps getting better and better and better. And so when I share this with my podcast listeners, like, why would I ever want to stop? Because a year from now, I'll probably be. There's no reason for me to believe the graph is just going to start going down or leveling out. The graph just keeps going up and up and up. So why would I ever want to stop? Because I feel better now than I did a year ago, which was better than the year before. I just want to keep feeling better and better. So my plan now is just not to stop. Now, taking a little tolerance break is a different story. I've taken 4 to 6 weeks off, just not microdosing at all. But in the scheme of things, in the long run, I think it's something that just keeps working and working and getting better and better and better. And so my answer is I don't plan to stop.
And during that 4 to 6 weeks that you took a little break, did you notice any, like, did you find it was the graph was started, going down?
Yeah, no, I really didn't. If anything, I probably felt that the graph was leveling out and it was still very calm and everything was great. But this is my life, and also I am podcasting about it, and I'm almost using myself as a guinea pig, and I want to share my experience with others. So I figured I'm gonna continue. I took a tolerance break, but I'm going to continue, and I'm really glad I did, because again, that's when I saw that graph just up, kept going up and up and up, and it's still to this day still continues.
Wow. Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So, based on your own experiences and the hundreds, if not thousands, of anecdotes that I'm sure you receive from your listeners for your YouTube channel, or well, the viewers rather on the YouTube channel and the listeners on your podcast, what would you say are, some of the key benefits and then also the downsides or risks associated with microdosing? Can we give, let's say, both, so we have a balanced view?
Let's start with the second part, the risks of microdosing. Let's assume you're sticking to the law and you're breaking the law anywhere. So that's off the table, the legal thing. The good thing about psilocybin is that it's one of the safest medicines out there. It's a plant-based medicine. It's extremely safe. And when I say extremely safe, meaning you cannot overdose. So you can take a truckload of psilocybin. I'm not recommending this, but you could take a large dose of psilocybin, and the worst thing that is going to happen is you're going to have a really powerful trip. Again, not recommending that at all. However, like physiologically, it doesn't kill you. There's no overdose. You can't overdose. It's very, very safe in that regard, and also it's not addictive. There's never going to be a point where you feel like I've got to do this every day or else. It's you can walk away from it. It's not an addictive medicine at all. So that part, it's extremely safe. The first part of your question. Wait, what was the first part again? I'm sorry. I wanted to. The second part was so important. Tell me the first part one more time.
Well, the first part was about what are the benefits, which I think you kind of touched on, which
right.
is good. But are the downsides or risks? If there are, you can touch on any of them, or have you heard of any experiences of people having a negative effect of microdosing?
Okay, right. So I touched on the downsides and risks, and there are some. Some people say that they do experience some anxiety when they microdose, and I'm able to help people with that, because generally, believe it or not, when somebody feels anxiety from a microdose, generally it means they've not always, but it means they may have taken a too small of a dose, and just something started, but it's not enough, and they just start to feel anxious. So if anybody that I'm working with, or anybody that asks me the question on my podcast, I generally say, let's increase the dose just a little bit, and 9 times out of 10, they say the anxiety is totally gone. But what are the benefits? What can it treat? I mainly started using this for mental health issues, and the most common are depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Those are the absolute most common mental health issues that people turn to microdosing for. And I even though I never served in the military, a lot of people think of PTSD as serving in the military, but my first marriage, there was absolutely a lot of trauma. There just was, and so I consider myself like somebody that has had PTSD. The microdosing has helped me with all three of those for sure. I don't feel any effects from anything, and I'll just touch on the depression. I was never really, like back when I was younger, never diagnosed officially with depression. But when I moved to Salt Lake City, there were days many days, more than not, that I would wake up in the morning and just something, just along with the anxiety, just something didn't feel right. I had this weird feeling that the day wasn't going to be good. It's very hard to put into words, Nicole, but I know for sure, and my psychiatrist did agree with me that there's definitely a component of depression that I had. So it really has helped take care of all three of those that I just mentioned 100%. There are other things people want to microdose for. Different mental health conditions, OCD, ADHD, but also people want to become, they want to change their lives. They want to become more spiritual. They feel like they're just kind of on this treadmill in their lives, and they don't really see the real deep meaning of life. People want to do that. People want to become more mindful. People want to become more creative. I've actually microdosed before skiing, before some type of athletic, something that I was doing, and it actually gives me more clarity, believe it or not. So it's multifaceted. There's just so many different reasons. And I hate to be somebody that sounds like a snake oil salesman. And by the way, I don't sell anything, so it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not a salesman. There's nothing I have to sell. But it's almost like it fixes everything you got going on bad in your life. It just seems like it does that.
That's quite fascinating, actually. And so
I've got people that listen to my show, people that you would never believe would be interested. Like, for example, my mailman. Well, she's a male woman. She listens to my podcast. She's got a great life, but she thinks it's super interesting. And I've got just people from all walks of life that, again, people that you would probably never touched a recreational drug in their lives, but people are extremely interested, and they're listening to this because it's making a tremendous difference.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, David. That's really, really insightful. And I hope that the listeners have kind of taken away, some sort of insight into something that now we hear about. It's becoming so much more, you hear about these concepts that are becoming so much more mainstream. You see the documentaries on Netflix and it's so helpful to hear from someone who has personal experience and really share honestly about your experiences and how your journey has gone. So thank you, David, for doing that so honestly and so generously. So thanks. Right. Well, we're on.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Well, we're on to the Envisionaire questionnaire already. I could talk to you probably for hours about this, but we are on to the Envisionaire questionnaire, which is a final part of the podcast. And it's a feature that we ask guests to participate in. And we ask the guests to reflect on 3 questions, looking at their past and considering their present and looking towards the future. So are you ready, David?
Okay, let me see. Let me think. Okay, I am ready now, Nicole. I am ready. Throw it at me. Fire away.
So
I hope I can do okay.
I'm sure you will. So looking at your past, if you could, your 15-year-old self, the young David before he went to dental school, what advice would you give yourself and why?
My 15-year-old self. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, and it might be very simple, but I think it's really, really important, would be I would tell myself, David, follow your passion. Do not let anybody else influence you as to what they think you should do in your life, because you're the only one that really knows in your heart what you want to do. And other things can sound good, and it might be better for, like, society thinks you're doing something that's like right, but you're the only one that knows exactly what you want to do. So follow that passion, because also what I've learned, Nicole, is if you don't follow your passion, if you're doing something that's somehow just not right, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a profession or a job or anything like that, you can only cover it up for so long, and it's going to come back in probably mental and physical ways. You're going to have to deal with it.
Oh, that's good advice. Good advice, David. Thank you. Reflecting in the present, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you have dinner with?
Other than you mean?
Yeah, well, when you come to London, we will definitely have dinner.
Absolutely. Okay, let me think. Okay, if I could have dinner with anyone in the world, this is going to sound weird, but my answer is going to be, I don't think there's just one person. I don't know if there's that one person out there. My feeling would be that I would want to have dinner with or get together and learn something from anybody that could teach me something, because I've got thousands of followers on my show and through social media, and it doesn't matter what somebody's what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody's what they're doing in their life, whether they're the highest level, whether they're the president of something, or whether they're just a regular person working every day, getting through the grind. I feel if I can learn something from anybody, I will sit down with that person, and I'd love to hear what they say, because the last thing I feel like is that I know everything and nobody else does. So I would like to learn from anybody that could teach me something, Nicole. I hope that answer makes sense. Because I like to learn from regular people, because in the end, we're all just regular people. No matter what anybody does for a living or how much money they have, it doesn't mean they're special. We're all regular people, and I want to learn from regular people.
I love that. I've always had that sort of mindset that we can all learn from each other, like whether it's inspiring, like they've done something or they've learned something, or if it's a cautionary tale. Sometimes it's a cautionary tale and everyone has something to share and we can all learn from each other. And that is kind of premise. The podcast is premised on that, this idea that we can all learn from each other and we can all kind of turn challenges into opportunities. And so, but the only way to do that is to learn from people, so yeah, I agree. That's a nice one. Right. And then the final question, which is future looking, is what is one goal that you would like to achieve in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think I've come so far, and I've tweaked my life in the past 3 that have made my life so perfect for me. What I'd like to see happen in the next 5 years is continue this journey of following my passion and not wavering and not doing something that I don't want to do, following my passion. Because when I'm able to follow my passion and when I'm at peace and things are flowing really easily through my life, that's the point where I'm able to help other people do the same. So why would I want to waver? Why would I want to stop? So I think the answer would be keep doing what I'm doing now, following my passion.
I love that. Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much, David, for being on the Envisioneer podcast and being so honest and generous with all of your personal experiences and, your journey as well into microdosing, but also generally like your mindset. I loved hearing all of that. It was really, really interesting what how passionate you are about growth mindset as well. So thank you so much. And for those who want to connect with Dave, can you share with the listeners or viewers that are watching, how they can connect with you?
I'd be happy to. And I want to thank you as well, Nicole, for having me. I really enjoyed this hour or however long we've gone. We're not looking at clocks now because we're having such a good conversation. But sure, it's great. Thanks so much. I think the easiest way and the best way for somebody to connect with me would be to just look up my podcast. And it's simply, as you said at the beginning, simply called Microdose U, just the letter U, Microdose U. It's on Apple, Spotify, any platform that you listen to podcasts, you're going to find it there. So just do a search there, Microdose U. if anybody wants to connect with me and send me an email, I'll give, if it's okay, I'll give my email address. That's totally fine with me if it is with you. So it's Dave and it's my last name, Dave at Madow.com, Madow, Dave at Madow.com. You'll reach me there. I try my best to answer every email. And I'm very easy to find on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on Facebook. Nicole, I just started messing around a little bit more with with TikTok, just to kind of to see if but it's tough. My main stuff is my audio podcast and Facebook, and people can send me an email, and I'm happy to try to help anybody that.
Amazing. Well, I'll also put all of the links and everything in your email address. I'll put it all in the show notes so everyone can also just search that, open that up, and you'll see everything there. And we just want to.
Well, that'll be great. And also, if I may, once you find my podcast and listen to my podcast, in the show notes of every episode, I've got some important links there.
Amazing.
So that's why I say the best way is just to listen to the podcast, because my email address, again, the link is there. My private Facebook group that we talk about all things microdosing, that's all there. But you have to get into the show notes of the podcast, and the podcast, everything's free. I don't charge for anything on the podcast whatsoever.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, David, again, for being part of the Envisioner podcast. I can't wait for you to come to London. We'll have grab a meal to eat, and it'll be so great to catch up. But thank you again for being part of the podcast. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that.
If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit subscribe and check out this video here.